Welcome everybody, just Mike here. Anyway, we have another clock to work on. Can you believe that? It is a Master Crafters, and there's the face of it. Normally I show you tearing it apart, but this time I'm going to show you putting it back together again. Now this clock, they're all really old. And let me show you the one we're working on. This one here, because of it being plastic, is really yellowed. And so I'm thinking about maybe doing something to this because maybe it needs updated. Maybe I want to hide that yellowing color that's on here. Maybe that's smoke from cigarettes back in the day. I don't know, but maybe I think I'm going to change that. I've already put gold around the windows and only have two pieces of plastic that goes in these two windows here. They're yellow color, I do believe, and so whether these are going to stay white or if I find something that is colored that I could put in there, I'm going to do that too. So anyway, let's get to it. And so these are all the pieces that came off of this. Now, I've always wondered, like such as this for example, what does this clock do? Well, playing with it a little bit, I've found out that this here, then the clock did work just a little bit and stopped, but this here is continuously moving up and down. And what that's going to be connected to is the bell that goes up into the tower here. Now, here I've already painted the bell. The bell is just a plastic bell. I thought I might be able to clean it because I thought it was metal. Well, it's not metal. It's just a plastic bell. And it has this weight here that will help it move back and forth as it's hanging. And through this spring looking thing, it's not a spring, but it's coiled up. And there's this pin. There's this pin here that goes through the bell. And then in the back side of this, there's a spot for it to go into. Now, believe it or not, I have cleaned this. It looks like hell, but that's part of age and plastic. You see the man's hollow on the back side, but his arms move up and down as it has a wire that goes across. And it had this red carpet. Felt is what it is. And I was going to change it, but the man is glued in and it has these two metal pieces here. There's a piece of glass that slides in there. And all this is kind of like welded in. And so unless this is really bad, I'd go ahead and just rip it out of there, cut it around those, and slide me a new piece in. I'm not sure what I would have done with the man because, like I say, they're melded in, but the carpet's, I'm going to say, good enough. I did take pictures of all this stuff, but the number one thing that usually is bad on this clock, or goes bad, is why it doesn't run, besides being filthy. You have this wheel here that's located inside this cage. When it's put together, you'll see a cage, and it has this gear. Let's see if we can get a little closer. Look at that. It has this gear on here, and that gear wears out. This one happens to be broken now, as I touched it. But that gear, well, it needs to be pulled off of there. Now, just to warn you, I haven't cleaned this. I'm not going on just to wipe it down. But when you put a new gear on that you can buy, I think they're $10, I don't remember. But remember this shaft moves up and down, and so you need to pay attention to that when you're sliding the new gear on. You don't slide it on so far, and then the next thing you know, your shaft is moving, because then how do you know where it's supposed to be located, that shaft or this here or the gear, to be in the right position? Now for the gear, I happen to have another movement here. It's inside there, and I put the gear in there, but I don't want this movement because I don't know why. I do know that I wanted to get that gear back off and put it on that one. I think the reason why on this one is because that shaft moved on me and I didn't know really where it's supposed to be. So when I do this other gear, I'll pay attention to that. And this one happens to have the big hole, which I don't know what clock that fits, but you just take this rubber off. This piece that's in here, let's see, it's just sitting in there. You'd pop it out and pop this piece that came with your original works in there, and then that way you have the proper size shaft for your clock that you own now, unless you happen to have that one. This one was ordered online as the full unit motor, is why I have this one. And I stole that and put in another clock, and like I say, I didn't realize it until too late, that metal rod was moving. Just saying that some of the mistakes I kind of went through. This here is just a rubber grommet or whatever that I'm sure fits all the way down there, and then that way you can push it up in your clock. And I would guess, because this is threaded here, you'd probably put a nut on to hold it up into place. So to get this thing apart, you will be taking out your screws. Don't forget to take pictures of what you have so you get it back together again, because all those pieces, they kind of connect together, some of them. And so you need to know just how they go, including there's this piece here, an arrow looking thing. That there, because these works are so cheap, however you want to put it, the clock will start running backwards, and that's the cause to stop the clock from running backwards and get it to run forward, because it'll stop it and it still wants to work, so it starts going the other way. And you might notice second hands move and then like that. Well, it doesn't make the funny noise. Hope you enjoyed that. So anyway, okay, we got the screws out. Now it'll pull apart. Kind of watch this a little bit. You need to kind of pull it away from these gears here so you don't fall out and you'll lose track. But here you just kind of give them some wiggles that hopefully they'll come off. Didn't look like they're going. There they go. So right in there is where that gear was. Now when you're putting this together, let me get a little screwdriver. It's easier to push things around. Well, this here is where the arrow thing is, and it has a spring underneath on the shaft, and that arrow thing needs to be pointing over here, because the back side of it is what catches on this part of the motor, and as this is turning, if it's turned the wrong way, it gets caught and then turns back the other way. Right there's that plastic gear I was talking about, a new plastic gear. So that's another thing too. You can't necessarily set it down, because your hand shaft is here, and as you just saw, it all falls apart. So there's the new shaft, or the new gear. And comparing the two, it looks like I have this rod up too high here, needs to be pushed in. One way to check that is to do the two bottoms and lining them up. It's showing you need to push it in. Gear on, make sure the collar is sitting above, because that's how the old one looked. And now I suppose they have the right measurement. So this here metal gear that has the plastic arrow, it takes the spring which you got to kind of watch that when you're installing it. You have these two gears. They go together with the gear in the middle, like so. And when we're putting this together, some of the gears obviously go in between these two plates. Otherwise you have this here, we'll call it the hour hand shaft, the minute hand shaft, and there's the gear in there, so you know there's a gear that goes in between here. And this thing we don't worry about. This here is the cool part, that this gear gets hooked on later, and it screws into the frame, and this slowly turns around like this. That's to operate the strings will be hooked on here, and that's what makes the man move his arms, and the bell will also hook up to this with strings, makes it look like it's ringing. So this is the original plate to that. Because of this, I didn't want to get carried away with it, to cleaning it. So the most I did is I used some Dawn dishwash soap and a toothbrush just in this area here, and you can see where it's not that clean. I want to put a drop of oil in there. There's with the new gear. This here is what so you can change the time. Again, and you put a drop of oil in there. So it fits in between. I'm hoping I get to keep this in the view of the camera. So this spring one goes in there, but I'm going to install this one first, I think. This is the one that grabs that gear right there. Like so. And trying to hold that spring on and get the arrow pointing over this way. And the arrow will be underneath, we'll say, this plate. So it's
semi-difficult what you got to do. So you got to worry more about the arrow that wants to turn everywhere but the way you need it to. Got to convince the spring to move up where you need it to. There we go. Oh, it fell off or out. There we go. It's in, but it's semi-not because that spring's holding it up. And now we need to drop the plate down on it. We need to check, make sure all of our gears are hitting in the plate that it needs to. It's moving. It goes in here. So you got those two plastic pins, and you got that grabber, and you got this that goes into that hole, and that all this brings it up to that gear. And because that screw hole, it's going to hold this whole thing together. I hope I was in view of the showing you these things where they go. Now it's better to have a big end on your screwdriver so it fits solid in there, because some of these are really tight popped in there. I don't know why. But this way you don't strip out the end of your screw either. So there it is. It's supposed to run. Let me see about jury rigging this together and see if this will turn. I don't want you to see what I'm doing to get this to run because it's not natural. So there you go. So now let's get it hooked up in there and see if we can get this thing going. But I want to polish the brass frame first. This brass frame actually doesn't look too bad. You can see moisture damage or whatever on it a little bit. And it might be filthy after looking at what that clock looked like originally. So let me get this cleaned up and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So I'm not saying it came any cleaner or whatever, but it does have a little bit of a shine to it. This here is really beat up like someone was taking a screwdriver to it or something. I thought it was moisture damage, but it's just kind of gnarred up all the way around it. And I went ahead and cleaned up the glass and the dials there too. This dial happens to be a metal dial, which I prefer. And also, I have no idea about this type of clock. Oh, that's what I use to clean the brass. But this type of clock here, I have no idea. The movement in it is the one that's normally from Japan, made in Japan. And like I say, I don't understand at all of how the United States could allow these to come in and still be using the name Master Crafters when it's a Japan clock, not a American clock. So like I say, I'm confused when it comes to that. But then again, where are we not confused with the government? Just saying. So on this clock, it had these that went clear through instead of screws that screwed into the movement. and then it just slides into these holes here. It has two metal tabs there. Now this one does say made in the USA. Well, maybe this is I don't understand why it has this type of movement, or maybe somebody copied the movement too. I don't know. I'm not going there. I already did once. So anyway, here we'll go ahead and put our hour hand on. And I normally start them off facing the 12. Get our minute hand on. This doesn't have an alarm, so you don't have to worry about where it's setting. You just have to make sure it's on. And this minute hand is curved, so that way it didn't hit the domed glass. And then we have our second hand to put on. So you hold that in while you're flipping it back and forth, because there's nothing, these aren't screws, these are bolts. And what these actually do is they come through, and when you put your back plate on, this is where the nuts go to hold this works in, or this movement in, and hold the back plate on. So I've bent over the tabs to hold this to the dial and whatnot, but still this is not connected. It rattles around, and so I'm not ready to put that on. But they do come with these cardboard deals here that slide over. Oh, and the nut is up inside. That there is so you can screw or pull the frame down to these. There, one goes on each one of those. Actually, I can go ahead and put those on now, and maybe that'll hold this into place. Okay, my battery died. My other battery was already dead. I forgot about that last night. So today, I'm showing you what I did last night, and I just got done putting the sealer on this silver leafing. So I did just the roof and the hoe top where the bell is. The silver leafing is the same as your gold and your copper leaf. It's just a real thin piece of aluminum. Then, of course, you make sure your heater doesn't kick on if it's still cool where you're at, like it is here. So there it is so far. Now to see about getting these windows fixed. So I'm making my windows. I have these, I think it belongs to a kid's toy or whatever. They're colored plastic whatever they call those things. Anyway, I cut them, and I used a piece of this container, harder plastic. I cut it out and then cut sections so I could glue these on that piece of plastic. Now I did have somewhere around here, but I can't find them, the full square, which would have been a lot easier, but this should work just fine setting over the window and having a two-tone window. A little more stained glass looking.
So that's the Master Crafts church that I fixed, and doesn't look like it has smoke damage anymore. I'm very happy with what I've done already with using the aluminum, well, they call it silver foil, but it's aluminum, just pressed and obviously shined up from the pressing. And I don't care what it's made out of. All I know is I was looking for the silver color. Yes, I could have put the gold leaf on the roof, but I wanted a little bit of a change. And I did put gold trim around the windows and whatnot, so there's my change. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have one, there you go. You can fix it yourself if you'd like. It has to be, if you're doing the church, it has to have the strings going straight. Don't get them wrapped around the bolts that come through so you can put the nuts on for the back. Get it as straight as possible, and that way the bell will ring properly, not hit too far and stop the clock and make it go backwards. Anyway, just Mike here. Thanks for stopping by, and give me a thumbs up. Comment if you'd like. Let me know what's going on in your life with the clocks, or just say hi. And don't forget to subscribe because it's free. Thanks for stopping by again. God bless.